Welcome to Man About Danville with Logan H. Gurman, a podcast for Danville, Kentucky and beyond. Conversations with friends, and you get to listen. Brought to you by the Logan Company, a commercial and residential real estate brokerage for Danville and Central Kentucky. 80% Danville-centric, 20% eccentric.
Good morning, Danville, Kentucky. Welcome to Man About Danville. You are listening to the most influential, fastest growing podcast for Danville, Boyle County, the Bluegrass region, and the entire state of Kentucky. I, of course, am the man about Danville himself, Logan H. Gurman. Thank you for joining me as you dig yourself out, shovel your driveway, build an igloo, stay in hibernation. Whether you're out snowshoeing or driving your dog sled, I appreciate it. And let me tell you who else I appreciate these days. If you work for KU or Intercounty Electric, if you are out in the cold busting it to get the power on or to keep it on, I want to say sincerely thank you. All those people who are keeping the roads plowed and salted and cleaned up, all the first responders, everybody that's keeping the stores open and the food stocked, and the guys that are keeping my internet up. Kentucky WiMAX, those are the guys that have kept my internet going through all this, and actually they've done a bang-up job as I've had two kids in virtual school. I want to thank them for keeping the internet running for me. That's been invaluable. Also, special thanks to my listener of the week, Kathy M. Kathy M. is the listener of the week. She's a former Danvillian who listens on a regular basis to stay in touch with what's going on in this funny little town. I appreciate her comments and encouragement. So, Kathy M., thanks for listening. If you enjoy this podcast, I hope you would consider liking it, giving me a review or a rating, or sharing it on whatever social media platform you choose. Wherever you listen, there should be a little share button up in the corner. If you would hit it and post it to social media, I'd appreciate it. Be sure to tag me so I can thank you personally. This week, I'm joined by two guests, John Duff, who's the assistant pastor, and Chris Morgan, who's the senior pastor of Centenary United Methodist Church here in Danville. They're both relatively new Danvillians, relatively new to the area, and it was nice to talk to them and get their perspective on town from somebody that's recently moved in. So let's get right to the show. I am pleased to be joined today by John Duff, the assistant pastor at Centenary United Methodist Church here in Danville, and Chris Morgan, senior pastor of Centenary United Methodist Church in Danville. Thank you, gentlemen, for being with me today.
It's great to be with you today. This is Chris, and I enjoy local kinds of podcasts like you do, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Yep, glad to be here. This is John.
All right. So the premise of this podcast is I have conversations with my friends. And the truth is, I don't know either of you guys from Adam, but you all are new to town. And this podcast has turned into a way for me to make new friends. And I'm glad you're in town, glad you're here, glad you're willing to be guests in this experiment. When did you all come to town, and what was your story to get here?
Well, I came to town just over a year and a half ago, and my story to get here, as most United Methodist stories to get places, are the bishop appointed me here. And so that's how I got to Danville. We have an appointive system, and we're sent.
Yeah. And for me as the assistant, so Chris is an elder in the church, which means he's appointed. I am in the ordination process, but I am not, I don't have any ordination that makes me to be appointed. And so when the position opened up at Centenary, actually Chris and I, this part of the story is Chris and I have known each other for a while, and he's kind of been a mentor of mine. And I have been for the past 4 years working in Lexington at a United Methodist Church in Lexington. And then this job opened up, and Chris said, "Hey, John, you want to apply and go through the interview process?" And so I did. And then I got here, and it's really fun to be working with Chris. And I'm the assistant pastor.
Just celebrating 6 months of that.
Yeah.
Right?
So I've been here for 6 months.
So John, you moved here from Lexington then?
Yeah. So I had grown up in Lexington, and I went to St. Luke United Methodist Church there. And then grew up in Lexington, went to University of Kentucky, and then came out to Wilmar Asbury Seminary to go to school to become a pastor. And then I've worked at a couple of churches in Lexington before I came to Danville.
And where did Chris come from?
I was in Franklin, Kentucky, which is just above the Tennessee line, just south of Bowling Green. And the distinction of the church that I came from was that I came from the congregation where Johnny Cash and June Carter were married.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And I got a chance to be there for the 50th anniversary of that. And you would never imagine the number of people who are still such Johnny Cash and June Carter fans that they want to get married in the same spot that Johnny and June did.
I lived in Memphis for about 10 years, so I understand devotion to musicians of that era.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a family member that was married at Graceland.
Yeah, we would watch, people from multiple continents every year roll in August for tribute week. So I can believe that people wanted to get married in the same spot where the Cashes did. That's awesome. John, you moved here during the pandemic. Chris, you moved here and then we had the pandemic. How has that made your transition?
Several.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I had several months pre-pandemic, and those were great. I felt like I was making great strides at learning the community and learning the congregation. And then suddenly everyone has masks on, and it's a very different kind of experience. But, we've made it work, and it's the church has exercised grace with us in all the ways that we've had to change things. So that's been a positive, I guess, that has come through this. Flexibility has proven to be less irritating to people. I mean, it would be one thing if it was just Centenary that was asking us to be flexible all the time, but everybody is asking everyone in every case to be flexible all the time. So I think we're getting used to it.
Yeah. And I got here in August. So that's, the pandemic had been in full swing for a while. And so that's been interesting trying to get to know people. We've done, especially right at the beginning, we did some stuff online of videos of me and Chris and basically just getting to know me. And so what's been kind of interesting for me getting to know Danville and our congregation more is I'll be kind of out doing a few things, and sometimes people come up to me and say, "Hey, John, I know you from church," because they see me from the Facebook Live stuff we do and from our conversations, and then they introduce themselves, which is good. But I've felt like we've done a good job of connecting with folks even in the middle of the pandemic.
Well, how are you all finding Danville, the city, as a place to live, since you're both relatively new?
I love Danville. The appreciation for history, the local places that we have on Main Street and in downtown. I think there's one of the water towers on the way out of town says Danville, just the nicest people or just the nicest place, something like that. And I found that to be very much the case. So I've enjoyed living here. My children attend the Danville school systems. My wife teaches math in the Danville High School. And so we've been able to be connected any number of ways with the school system. And I've got football player, soccer players, we've got basketball player. So there's a sports connection that keeps us going. And that's been a little strange during the pandemic, but it actually has seemed to be kind of an anchor when there's nothing else going on. We can have two fans to go and watch a basketball game. That's a good thing.
And how old are your kids?
Yeah.
Okay. I have a 15-year-old, a 17-year-old, two 18-year-olds, a 20-year-old, a 23-year-old, and I have a new granddaughter who is 5 weeks old.
Yeah, Chris is 47 and he has a granddaughter. So, sorry, I told everyone your age, but
it's okay. That's not a secret.
That is a lot of
young granddaughter.
That's a lot of ministering to youth right there in your own household.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah, they're very welcoming, and it's funny because I moved here and I'm a single guy, so I'm 30 and single, and they've kind of brought me into their family, and I'm kind of a part of their family too as an associate. So, well,
that's what they need. They need another mouth to feed hanging around their house. So that's good that you're providing that for them, John.
Yeah.
There you go. I moved back to Danville about 50. I grew up here and then lived away for a time and moved back here about 15 years ago to raise my family. I think Danville's a wonderful place, and I think we're blessed with two great school systems. I don't know about dating in Danville, though. That might be something of a tall. I'm not going to ask you about your dating situation here on the podcast. So
Gotcha.
that's out on the pre-approved question list.
Sounds good.
Unless you want to talk about it.
No, that's okay. I mean, I don't mind, but
maybe if listeners want to email me, I'll pass along your digits with your discretion. All right. What have you guys?
Cool.
How have you all filled extra time personally during the pandemic, or have you had any extra time?
Yeah. So I moved in August here, and I really love Danville. I came from Lexington. And so Lexington's, I grew up in Lexington, so I never thought of Lexington as like a really big place, but then I came to Danville, and then going home, I'm like, wow, Lexington's pretty big. But I really love Danville. I heard a lot of really good things. And even in the pandemic, I've grown to love it. I'm a burger guy, so I wanted to find a good burger place, and I really like Harvey's. They have a good burger. And so I'm content with that. And Danville's pretty cool. And I've moved to I bought a house here, my first time buying a house, and I own a townhome, and it has a nice garage, and I do some woodworking. So I've had some good woodworking projects during the pandemic when you can't get out as much or do as much. And I've really enjoyed doing that. I'm not a professional woodworker by any means, but I have some of the right tools, and it's a lot of woodworking is a matter of thinking through your projects and knowing what you want to come out and what are the steps to get there. And so that's been really fun. I built myself a coffee table and various other projects for obviously moving into a new house. I have various pieces of furniture that I want to build and make. And so that's been really fun. That's taken up kind of a lot of my time.
I feel like for me, and I expressed this at some point recently in some format, which I cannot recall, but I think for a lot of people that it's not just been the pandemic in the last 11 months, but it's been the pandemic exacerbated by some extra factor.
Yeah.
And so that means we have a lot of different pandemic experiences. You've got the pandemic experience of the person who suddenly finds out he or she has an illness that they didn't know that they had, and it's very serious. We have the person in the pandemic whose aunt or maybe either whose mother or father died, and the funeral that had always been anticipated for this person just wasn't able to be. And so we've got the pandemic plus people who've not been able to grieve properly. For my family, we've had the pandemic plus one of my children in May was diagnosed with a terminal brain tumor, and so the care for him during this time of pandemic, when hospitals don't look the same, MRI facilities don't look the same. There are different rules for every place you go. Two parents can come in. One parent can come in, one sits in the car while the other goes in. Yeah. So it's, I think my experience during the pandemic, the extra time has been spent loving one of our kids in a way that is significant, but that also requires an investment of physical time, physical energy to care for.
That would be an almost impossible situation to live through in the best of times. I can't imagine trying to live through that while not being able to go about your life and do the things that need to be done. Those activities of daily living have been curtailed the way they have been. So you have my sympathy and prayers as you and your family move through that phase of your all's lives.
Thank you. It is bizarre. It is at times sort of dystopian. I've not seen my parents, and my parents have not met their new great granddaughter. It's been more than a year since I've seen my parents, who live in South Carolina. That's where I'm from. So there are a lot of things that would generally happen in this season where we'd have lots of visitors from other places who would come up, and that's just not been a possibility for us over the last few months.
All right, but let's turn. How has Centenary? For those that don't know, Centenary is right there at the entrance to Millennium Park. Yes. Beautiful new campus that went up in the past. I don't know. I remember driving down Perryville Road the day the steeple was going up. It was almost like it was rising up off the plane in front of me. And when my kids were young, they were in the Mom's Morning Out, or the Kids Morning Out program there. How has the church pivoted to operate and serve members during the pandemic?
One of the primary decisions that we made early on was to take seriously both the virus and people's anxiety surrounding the virus. Yeah. And so everything that we have done that is significant as a part of the entire worshiping community. And by that, I mean worship. By that, I mean like the pastor's Bible study that we lead on Wednesday night, special services that we may have. We have offered all of those in both a format that in those times when the bishop has not asked us to be closed, there were about 4 weeks when the bishop asked us not to open because the numbers were very high. But with the exception of those 4 weeks, we have been able to do very well at social distancing. We do require masks when attending worship. But everything that we've done on a congregation-wide level has had both a live stream, primarily through Facebook Live. We've tried a number of different formats, and that's the one we've settled on as the easiest for now. It eventually gets moved to other locations, but we've made that commitment to people who were not willing, able, comfortable coming out. They can still participate in everything that we do as a full worshiping community at Centenary. That required some investment in technology. And our folks were very happy to make that investment. And it's paid off in some intriguing ways. Number one, it's kept a number of people connected to the church on a weekly, sometimes twice a week basis. Number two, it has allowed people literally from all over the world, some of those folks that I married because they wanted to get married where Johnny Cash got married, have followed me over the years, and they'll write me from the Netherlands or the United Kingdom and say, we went to church with you this morning. Yeah. And, number three, it prepares us for a future where people who are able to be active now, but maybe in a year or 2 years will be more or less homebound, will still be able to keep a connection with their church family. And so we feel like, it's something that probably we wish we had done beforehand, but it's given us the perfect opportunity to kind of go digital in a way that does not replace in-person worship. And our in-person now is at our high point, will be at about 40% of the number of people in worship that we had prior to the pandemic. But if we count the people who will view us online or who will interact with us online, that's a higher number. That's a much more encouraging number.
Yeah, and the pandemic is interesting of how it's affected churches, because oftentimes some of the churches, and especially maybe smaller churches or whatnot, are resistant to change. Like they like the good old ways, and we've done it like this, and this works. But I mean, over the past 30 years, the digital world has transformed the way we communicate in general in the world. And some churches kind of we're behind the wave or the curve on that. And the pandemic has kind of forced churches into, okay, let's adapt and let's do, which is a good leadership move, to adapt and to move forward into the future. And so Centenary has worked at doing that. I also say one of the things we did, which I like a lot, and one of the reasons why I found your podcast is because we actually do a podcast type format as well on Tuesdays, and we show that on Facebook Live. And because a lot of young people connect with podcasts, and a lot of people like tuning in for that type of dialogue rather than like a sermon or a Bible study, which is more of like a teaching. Podcast is a conversation, and let's talk about that. And so we've done that, and that's been really fun as well.
People respond pretty well to that conversational format, I'd say.
Yeah.
So I know some churches are just releasing, sermons, for instance, in a podcast format, but you guys are doing original content.
Yeah. So we do our whole worship service, and we do that. But on Tuesdays, we do a podcast that is, we actually call it Musing Methodist. That's what we call it. And it's more like conversations around topics that are important for Christians to think about. So it's not, hey, let's look at this Bible verse and explain it and say how it applies to our life. It's more of like, sometimes we look at news stories. Like yesterday, I interviewed a friend who is originally from Myanmar, and with all the stuff going on in Myanmar right now with the military coup and whatnot, I just wanted to hear his take on it, and as a Christian, how he has responded to the military coup. And so paying attention to different things around us, and then but interesting topics that Christians should be thinking about. And if you're non-Christian, they're interesting as well.
Well, this podcast was my quarantine project. It's what I came up with to keep myself busy, and it's kind of turned into its own little project, and I anticipate it lasting beyond the pandemic too. All right. So my kids, when they were young, were enrolled in, I don't know if enrolled is the right term, but they attended is it Kids Morning Out program at Centenary?
Yes.
How are you all still doing that? And what other outreach programs are you doing? And how is the pandemic affecting those outreach efforts?
Well, the kids, youth, and children's programming are probably affected more than maybe any other aspect of the church. We do have some outreach things that are deeply affected as well, but KMO is currently not meeting. We have a list of standards that the denomination has provided to us, and those have been prohibitive at this point of us restarting that. But the conversation is now, as our numbers are going down and as vaccinations are being made available to people who would work at KMO and those sorts of factors going into it. Hopefully that is, that's something that 4 months ago, reopening KMO was not something I knew how we were going to do. And I don't know how we're going to do it today, but I'm a little more hopeful.
But if workers get a vaccine, we feel more comfortable saying, hey, let's think about this.
That sliver of hope is a good feeling.
It is. Oh my goodness. It's been a long time since, so I sort of, for whatever reason, looking at some of the scientific literature and listening to some of the experts at this, I stuck a stick in the sand at July 31st. And it's a stick in the sand, which means it can be moved, and it might have to be moved. But that's my hope that on July 31st, what I will recognize around me will be more like the pre-pandemic world than like the world in November and December of 2020. And I really feel like things continue to move that way, and that in the next few months, God willing, we're going to make some significant strides.
Yeah. And we try to do, obviously during the pandemic, a lot of the outreach and mission stuff is difficult to do because a lot of that involves, being with people, and we're trying to limit that. But one of the things that we are doing that we're actually really excited about is we're hosting a blood drive. The American Red Cross is coming into our building, and we're encouraging folks to sign up to give blood, because blood is really needed right now in the hospitals, as many of the listeners might know, especially if you're in that profession. But we, on Monday, the 22nd, coming up on Monday, February 22nd, we're hosting the blood drive from 1 to 6. And so if you are listening to this, we'd encourage you to sign up and give blood if you want to, especially if you have any of the antibodies, either through having COVID and recovering, or through having the vaccine. You can sign up at blooddrive.danvillecumc.org. And we're excited about that and our ability to help and to give in the care for folks during the pandemic.
And one of the benefits of that particular blood drive is they will tell you whether or not you have COVID antibodies. And I know that half of the people I talk to are like, well, I wasn't diagnosed positive, but I am sure that I had it back in October. And if you give blood, you're going to get a report that tells you whether you've got the antibodies or not. So,
all right. So that's coming up on Monday, the 22nd, 1 to 6, and anybody can participate.
Yes.
Or anybody that is eligible to give blood can participate. Do you need folks to sign up online beforehand?
It is helpful to sign up online because if they don't reach a certain threshold, they might call the event off. I'm not sure how close we are to that threshold, but it's nice to have people that are committed. And I think that there will not be problems with a certain number of walk-ins as well on that date, but signing up would help us.
Yeah, they're in need of a lot of blood. So if someone walks in and says, "Hey, I'm here," I'm sure they'll find a time and space to do that. So.
Give me the website where we can sign up again.
It is blooddrive.danvillecumc.org.
Okay. And I'll put a link to that in my show notes too, so people will be able to link directly to it.
Sweet.
As it happens, today is Wednesday. I am snowed in at my personal residence today with my limited residential internet access. You all are at Chris's home today. Is that correct?
Yes.
And it's, in addition to the pandemic, we're having this lovely ice and snow event. But today also happens to be Ash Wednesday, which is the first day of the season of Lent. What does Centenary do to observe Ash Wednesday and the season of Lent that leads us up to Easter?
Well, we spent a good deal of time putting together small packets of ashes that people could receive on Sunday in case they weren't comfortable coming on Wednesday. And we had planned to make some deliveries yesterday and the day before, but that didn't happen to some of our shut-ins. So we're going to have a virtual Ash Wednesday service at 6:30. That will be on our Facebook page on the Centenary, and it is the Danville Centenary Facebook page. We have a lot of centenaries in Kentucky, so even
and there's a prominent one in Lexington that folks sometimes get confused with us as well. So.
Right, the huge one on Tate's Creek.
Yes. So we're going to do that live tonight at 6:30 and offer people the opportunity, whether they had ashes or not, to feel the feeling of crossing themselves on their forehead and recognizing from dust you are, to dust you shall return. I describe Ash Wednesday as the day when Christians look death in the face and recognize that we are mortal and those we love are mortal, and that this in some way affects how we live today and tomorrow and the kinds of goals that we make for ourselves. And Lent is a season that that recalibrates us, and so we get lit off to a good start today, I hope, whether we can be together or whether we can worship virtually.
So as Lent is a season for preparation for the resurrection and Easter, is Centenary already planning ahead for Easter Sunday services 6 weeks from now?
We are planning there are a handful of unknowns.
I'm planning my own Easter outfit, by the way.
Oh, nice.
There may be bonnets involved. I'm so excited about spring showing up this year.
Yes, Easter is right around the corner, and we've got to plod through Lent to get there. But we are planning, and I was just thinking yesterday, the last real Christian holiday that we got a chance to celebrate pre-pandemic was Ash Wednesday of 2020, and then somewhere a couple of weeks into Lent, that's when the pandemic began. Yeah. So we missed most of Lent. We missed Holy Week, Maundy, Thursday, Good Friday. We missed Easter Sunday. Yeah. we were planning to have an outdoor worship service for Christmas Eve this year, rain or shine, and it didn't rain and it didn't shine. We had ice all over the place, and so we missed Christmas Eve this year.
And then we just did a virtual rather than in person.
Right.
So.
And all of these we did virtually as opposed to in person. So we were so looking forward to Ash Wednesday in person. But this completes like an entire year of liturgical holidays that we've had to do virtually as opposed to in person. And I hope that means the cycle is complete.
And we're very excited for Easter. And our default is to do as much as we can, plan as much, because we love these things, and we want people to be able to come out, especially it's hard because a lot of people feel isolation and loneliness in the pandemic. And so having a church service to go to, for an example, with safe mask and social distancing is something that can be really incredible emotionally and socially for someone who maybe is living at home by themselves or doesn't have a lot of family around. So that can be really important. So we try to do as much as we can at any of these. But obviously there are times that we need to say, okay, this is not safe, or we should scale back a little bit. And so, like for Easter, we won't have as much singing as we normally do, because of COVID and whatnot. So, so we're very excited for getting Easter.
I personally am. I don't know that I've ever been more excited for Easter than I have been this year. I don't know whether it's just because I'm getting older or we've had this year-long sojourn through the desert, I feel like, but I'm ready for Easter. I'm ready for spring, and I'm ready for some light at the end of the tunnel. Any other message you'd like to send out to the Danville community?
Favorite places in Danville. The Hub Coffee Shop is among the better coffee shop, and I'm kind of a coffee connoisseur.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy. I used to spend a little bit of time there, working on my computer, and I spend much less time out now than I did. So I look forward to the day when I can have my coffee and just drink it and write and read at the same time.
There are often some interesting conversations happening between other patrons at the Hub Coffee Shop. There's some interesting folks that go and sit and have deep conversations there.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So that's one place that I enjoy. And I'll tell you another place that has become a favorite of mine, and that is Tut's Egyptian Restaurant there on Main Street. Yeah. That has been closed through much of the pandemic, and he's opened back up for curbside service. And I think it's closed again through February. But I'm a perpetual tourist of the Middle East. And so, Jordan and Israel are actually my primary places that I love to go. And I love the food. And I feel like I have never really encountered food that I thought was comparable. And not only is the food comparable, but my favorite beverage is Turkish coffee. And never in America have I come across Turkish coffee that is anything like the real thing that they serve on the streets of Jerusalem or in small towns in northern Galilee if you ask for Turkish coffee. And here I am, this kind of clueless American, and I'll ask for Turkish coffee and they'll say, "You do not want Turkish coffee." And I'll say, yes, I do want Turkish coffee. And it's very strong. It's just delightfully pungent and powerful. And I'd say the only authentic Turkish coffee that I have ever had in the United States has been right here between my home and my place of work, right along the path. So I can't wait to get Turkish coffee. I've had to learn to make it myself during the pandemic. And so it really is a wonderful, it's almost a ritual to make Turkish coffee. And it's great, but it's also great to have somebody make it for you who knows what they're doing.
Well, I had no idea that you could get it at Tut's. I learned something new today. That's great. And it doesn't surprise me that of all the places in the world, Danville has it.
Yeah. And Chris is a coffee guy. I'm a tea guy. So I love Elmwood Inn. And that's just incredible that is in Danville, Kentucky. Like, that's incredible.
And Bruce knows as much about tea as anybody in the United States, and probably it's amazing that this funny little town has all these brilliant people. And I think Danville has traditionally done a good job of being very welcoming to new, interesting, smart people between the college and the hospital. And I love that about this town. So absolutely. Well, gentlemen, here's to having a burger or a cup of coffee with you at some point in the near future in IRL, in real life, as the kids say. They're going to cut my Zoom meeting off here in just a moment, but I wanted to thank you all very much for taking the time to talk with me today. I'll put links to Centenary, your blood drive, and your podcast in my show notes.
Awesome.
So, and I didn't know you had a podcast, so I'll check it out myself. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for being with me.
Yep. Thanks, Logan.
Well, thank you so much for having us on, and we look forward to meeting in an analog way before long.
Yeah. There's got to be light at the end of this tunnel somewhere soon. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. I'll talk to you soon.
Yep.
Goodbye.
But wait, there's more. It's time for What's Up, Danville. I'll tell you what's up with Danville. Snow, sleet, ice, freezing fog, snow, thunder. I don't know. I'm sick of the weather. I don't know what else has been going on. I've been trapped in my house for a week. Do stop by, however, the Art Center of the Bluegrass there on Main Street. The Art of Being Black Conversation Experience is running through March 31st. It's a wonderful exhibit and it's a wonderful chance to get to know and hear from some of the other people in our community that you might not hear from on a regular basis. I think sports are started back at center to some degree. I'll try to get some more information on that. I want to have some center coaches on. Jay Hoffman's a friend of mine's a coach. Drew Brees is a coach. I want to have those guys on and talk about what's going on in spring sports, and football is having an abbreviated spring season, so we're going to try and get some more information on that. If you have been saying to yourself, gee, I wish I had more opportunities to listen to Logan Gurman, the man about Danville himself, in a podcast format, I've got great news for you. I did a guest spot. I was a guest on Uncommon History of the South, a podcast done here locally in Danville, Boyle County by my friends Brian Wofford and Harold Edwards. They cover, they've been on here on my show previously, so they let me sit in with them as a guest on their most recent episode. So head over, find them wherever you listen to this podcast, Uncommon History of the South. By the way, you know this podcast is underwritten by my real estate brokerage. If your house is not currently on the market, if your house is not listed by a real estate agent and it's in Green Acres, I want you to give me a call or send me a message. I've got some folks that are looking specifically for something in that neighborhood. So if you're thinking about selling anytime in the next 6 months in Green Acres, holler at me, get at me, let me know where you are and what you've got. I may have an opportunity for you. I'd like to thank my guests, John Duff and Chris Morgan from Centenary United Methodist Church, for joining me. I appreciate them getting on while being trapped in their house with me in my house. It was a nice opportunity to have a conversation with somebody that's not in my immediate family. I'll try to get links up to everything we talked about in the show note. Do you want to get in touch with me about the show or real estate? Do you have an item for What's Up Danville? If you do, send me a message, ManAboutDanville@gmail.com. You can find me on my website, ManAboutDanville.com. I'm on the Insta, @ManAboutDanville. I'm on Twitter. The handle is @ManDanville. And, of course, I've got a Facebook page, @ManAboutDanville. You can find this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, Google Podcasts, and just about anywhere else you listen. You can also use your Amazon Echo to listen. And it also, somehow or another, I'm not exactly sure how, but it sends it over to YouTube. So if you'd like to watch on YouTube, you can do that. It's just the audio with me, a picture of me in the background. But if that makes you feel warm and fuzzy, you can, I think Mother likes to go and listen to it on YouTube. So if that's your cup of tea, head over there. If you have a moment, hit subscribe wherever you listen. I appreciate it if you take the time to give me a rating or review, give it a share. Appreciate all that stuff. You guys are the best listening audience, and it's really gratifying to know that people actually listen to this little project. So if you take time out of your day, I really do mean it. I appreciate it, and it keeps me encouraged to keep doing them. Anyway, be well, have a good weekend, and thanks for listening.
That's it. We're out. Thanks so much for listening. We really appreciate it. Subscribe to Man About Danville wherever you access your favorite podcasts, and be sure to tell your friends about us. You've been listening to Man About Danville with Logan H. Gurman, brought to you by the Logan Company, a commercial and residential real estate brokerage for Danville and Central Kentucky. Know someone who would be a good guest? Want to be a guest yourself? Have an idea for the show? Get in touch with us. Find all our contact information on the web at ManAboutDanville.com. Thanks for joining us.